My name is Janelle Crowe. I'm 31 years old, and this is a true story that still leaves my skin crawling and my breath. Short in 2019, I took a night job at a small town grocery store to escape a toxic relationship and rebuild my life. It was quiet, simple and harmless until I was transferred to night inventory in the back storage unit. There was a freezer room no one wanted to enter. They said it had a bad compressor, but the truth was colder than the ice inside. I heard whispers that didn't echo. I saw faces that didn't move, and eventually I found out that some things stored in cold are meant to stay that way. You believe that horror can be locked behind metal doors and temperature controls? Then subscribe, like, and share this. Story is written and edited by Dark Lifeside Diaries. I was hired at Ryder's Market in Missouri, an old neighborhood grocery store that had barely changed since the 70s. Rusted carts, flickering fluorescents, and dust-coated product shelves, but the pay was good and I needed to start over. The manager, Jeff, was nice but jittery, always looking over his shoulder, always locking the doors even when the place was empty, and my first week was normal. I stocked shelves, mopped floors, counted cans. Then Jeff asked me to do freezer inventory. It's not the worst job, he mumbled. Just don't stay in there too long. He said it like a joke, but his eyes didn't smile. The freezer room was at the back behind two thick steel doors. The temperature stayed at 10 degrees Fahrenheit, but it wasn't the cold that got to me, it was the silence. The kind that presses against your eardrums until your own breathing sounds like shouting. I stepped in and started counting frozen peas, chicken packs, and dairy crates. That's when I heard the first whisper, not from outside, from the back of the room. 17. I turned sharply. Nothing. The shelves were still, the air unmoved. I shook it off. Maybe the compressor was acting weird again, but then I heard it again. Aisle 17. I ran out, face burning from the cold. Jeff saw me and said nothing. He just handed me a coffee and said, "You heard it too, huh?" The next night I asked him what was in aisle 17. He stiffened. There is no aisle 17. I checked the store map. He was right. The aisles ended at 16. But inside the freezer there was an extra row, an offshoot at the very back. No label, no barcode tags, just a long narrow lane of frost-covered shelves that seemed to curve into the dark. When I asked about it again, Jeff lowered his voice and said, "There used to be an aisle 17 before the fire." What fire? He didn't answer, but that night when I clocked out, I found a sticky note inside my locker. Just one sentence: "Don't count past 16, they don't like being found." That night I had a nightmare. I was locked inside the freezer, my breath forming clouds that screamed instead of misting. Standing in front of me were 6 frozen bodies, all whispering numbers out of order. 3, 8, 14. 17, 17, 17. I woke up sweating, gasping, and checked the time. 3:17 a.m. Coincidence? Maybe, until I got to work and saw the freezer doors were open inside. The boxes were all rearranged, all lined to form a path that led directly to the hidden aisle. I don't know why I followed it. Maybe curiosity, maybe the same part of us that stares at car crashes or leans too far over balconies. But I did. At the end of the aisle, nestled behind 2 pallets of expired fish sticks, was a door I hadn't seen before. Not metal, wood, rotting, and on it carved with what looked like a knife. "You opened the cold, now we remember." I turned and ran, but when I reached the main door it was locked. Lights flickered, the compressor groaned, and over the speaker system, one that hadn't worked in weeks, I heard a woman's voice whisper, "You're the new one, you're the warmer." I screamed, and the freezer room answered a loud clang. Then soft footsteps that crunched, not because of snow but because something was dragging behind them, something frozen, heavy, reluctant to move. That was the night I stopped pretending nothing was wrong. That was the night I realized Ryder's Market wasn't just haunted, it was a fridge for the forgotten, and something in there had just thought enough to walk again. I didn't sleep after that shift. I sat on my couch with every light on, still wearing my work uniform, trying to convince myself it was stress, exhaustion, or some leftover trauma from my ex. But no hallucination could rearrange frozen aisles. No stress could make voices say your name over a broken intercom system. I decided I needed answers, not from Jeff, not from whispers from the door, that rotting wooden one hidden behind the frost. Burned fish crates in the back of the freezer, the one I swore I saw last night. So the next night I came early. Long before any other staff, I walked into the freezer room, this time bundled in thermal layers, and went straight to the back. There was no sign of the crates, no fish, nothing, just a wall that wasn't there yesterday, but the floor beneath it? It was what a puddle had formed, except it wasn't water. It was red, dark, half frozen, and slowly spreading. I touched the wall, cold as expected, but soft, not like drywall or insulation. It felt like flesh beneath ice, and when I leaned my ear against it, I heard breathing. "Janelle." My knees gave out. That was my name, not a hallucination, not a guessy whisper from the other. Side-eye Flood found Jeff in the back lot, chain smoking with a trembling hand. You saw it, he said without looking up, didn't you? I grabbed his collar and demanded answers. He nodded slowly and finally spoke. There was an aisle 17. He began 50 years ago, before I was even born. It was the deepest freezer section. Management kept the old meats and discount poultry back there. During a blizzard in 72, a pipe burst. Coolant flooded the aisle. No one noticed for hours. 5 employees were trapped inside during the overnight. 3 froze to death. 2 survived long enough to bang on the back wall for help. He lit another cigarette. They knocked until their hands split, until their bones shattered. I swallowed hard. And they? Door I saw? He looked up at me. That wasn't a door. That's where they were found, frozen, standing pressed against the wall, eyes open, mouths open. Like they were screaming for someone to let them out. I didn't want to believe it, but that night I came back after hours alone. I stepped into the freezer, walked to the back, and waited at 3:17 a.m. The wall rippled, and from the ice emerged a hand, not a hallucination, a real frostbitten hand, skin, gray-blue nails, split fingers reaching. I couldn't move. My breath caught in my throat as more of them appeared, arms, shoulders, faces, all trapped inside the ice. 5 in total, their eyes open, and all of them whispering in one voice. It wasn't the cold that killed us, it was being forgotten. Suddenly, the wall cracked, a sharp sound like ice under pressure. A chunk fell to the floor. Inside it, frozen solid, was a name tag, dusty, faded, but still legible. Janelle Crowe. I hadn't worn a name tag in weeks, not one like that. It looked 50 years old. It was mine. Ran down the hallway, past the dry storage, past the flickering lights that now hummed with static. Every surface began to reflect those frozen faces, even the glass refrigerator doors in aisle 4. I slammed into the break room and locked the door, but I could still hear them knocking, not just from the freezer, but from every shelf, every pipe, every vent. They were in the store, now no longer trapped, and they remembered me. The next morning I called out. Jeff didn't answer. In fact, Ryder's Market didn't answer at all. The number was disconnected, and when I drove back, there was no building, just an empty parking lot covered in snow. No sign the store had ever existed. Just a single thing left behind in the center of the lot, my name tag frozen in a block of ice, waiting. I didn't speak to anyone for 3 days after I found my name tag frozen in that block of ice, not because I didn't want to, because I couldn't in a free time. I tried. The words felt foreign, like they didn't belong to me anymore, like my voice was just a borrowed sound echoing from a place I'd never visited. The town records were no help. I searched for anything about Ryder's Market. A newspaper clipping, a business listing, even an old job posting. Nothing. It was like the store had never existed, like the building had been swallowed whole and buried under silence. But then I found an old forum online, a thread titled Freezer Room Ghosts, Small Town Missouri Market Hauntings. Posted 9 years ago. One user, one post, no replies. The post was short. Worked at Ryder's in 93 cold rooms, started whispering. I left after my shift partner vanished. Her name was Janelle Crowe. Still hear her when I sleep in age. That was the moment I stopped believing this was just about me. This was bigger, older, recurring. A loop that someone or something was repeating, and the common thread was Janelle. I tracked down the poster. Took days. Eventually, I found her living in a trailer near the outskirts of Ash Creek. Her name was Nancy Holloway, now in her late 60s. I knocked. She didn't ask who I was, just opened the door, looked at my face, and said, "You heard them too." We sat in silence for a long time. Then she told me the truth. There have been others. All women, all named Janelle, all pulled into that freezer. One by one, I asked why. She lit a cigarette with shaking fingers. Because the first girl who died in that freezer? Her name was Janelle Reese, 19th winter shift in 72. I froze. What happened to her? Nancy's voice cracked. She was the first to freeze standing. The others died huddled, curled in corners, but Janelle stood upright, eyes open, looking at the back wall. And she didn't scream. After that winter, the manager at the time supposedly ordered the aisle walled off, called it aisle 17 as a joke, until the joke started whispering back. They removed records, burned old staff files, changed ownership again and again, but the freezer stayed, Nancy said. And every few years it calls a new Janelle. I asked her why no one else remembered the store. Her eyes welled up. Because the building isn't part of town anymore, it's part of them. Who's them? I asked. She leaned in and whispered like someone might hear us. The cold ones, not ghosts. Not demons, just trapped memories, people frozen so long that the silence turned them into something else. They remember warmth and they hate it. That night I dreamed of myself in the freezer, but I wasn't made. Was Janelle Reese 1972 I saw through her eyes as she begged the others to stay calm. I saw the pipes burst, the doors freeze over, the lights dim. I saw the others die screaming, sobbing, but Janelle? She just stood there, eyes open, looking at the back wall, waiting like she knew, like it wasn't an accident. I woke up gasping, frost on my window inside my apartment. I reached for my mirror, written across it in fog. You are ready. The mirror cracked just like the freezer. Wally packed a bag, drove back to where the market used to Beatty lot was still empty, but now the snow had cleared. In one spot, an outline of a building. I stepped forward and felt the air change colder, thicker breathing. The store wasn't gone, it was just hidden, waiting, and I had just found the entrance again. The lot was supposed to be empty, the building demolished, the records erased, but as I stepped forward, a shiver slid down my spine, one that didn't feel like cold, it felt like recognition. The snow beneath my boots stopped crunching, it turned silent, soundless. I looked up, and the parking lot blurred like heat waves on a summer road, but these were made of cold then. It was just there, Ryder's Market, exactly as I remembered it. Old signage, flickering red, open light in the window, dusty doors sealed with age. And something older. The store had returned, or maybe it never left. I stepped inside. The air tightened around my lungs, the same broken tiles, the same moldy smell of expired bread, the same hum of lights that shouldn't have power, except now every aisle had a number up to 17, and at the end of aisle 17 stood her, Janelle Reese, frozen, pale lips cracked and eyes wide, not dead, not alive, something in between. I walked toward her slowly, her eyes followed me. You came back, she whispered. They always come back. I asked her why me? Why the name? Why the freezing? She didn't blink, her voice was soft like icicles cracking under pressure. Names are echoes the building remembers, the first to fall, the last to melt. It pulls in the ones that match the pattern, where not chosen, where repeated. Then she moved just slightly, her fingertips lifted and pointed behind me. Wall began to split, cracks formed in the plaster and opened like a pair of jagged jaws. Beyond it, the freezer room, but not like before. It was alive, flesh pink walls pulsed under frost hooks swung from the ceiling, not holding meat but faces. Frozen, screaming. My face repeated over and over again. This is the part where you scream, she said, but you won't not yet. Suddenly I was dragged. The floor under me turned to ice, slick and moving like a conveyor belt made of memory and regret. It pulled me into the freezer. The lights above hummed louder. The hum became voices. The voices became chanting. Crow, 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 17, Janelle, repeat. I slammed my fists against the invisible force dragging me. I screamed and someone screamed back, but it wasn't her voice. It was mine from somewhere inside the freezer, and then I saw her again, me frozen in the center, standing just like Janelle Reese did in 1972. Except this version of me was smiling. Now you know, she said. We don't freeze because of the cold, we freeze because the store wants to keep us. I reached out to touch the glass surrounding my double. It shattered instantly, and I was inside the freezer, inside the loop. I turned to run, but the exit was gone. Aisles now stretched endlessly, no doors, no breaks, just row after row of frozen time, and the store whispered, now we are complete. Now there are 17. They were never counting products, they were counting us. 17 Janelle Crowe, 17 voices, 17 forgotten girls frozen in time. I turned one last time to face Janelle Reese. She took my hand and said, they won't let you die, just remember to blink once every decade. And then I stood like her, still cold eyes open, waiting for the next one, because Ryder's Market doesn't disappear, it moves, and someday it'll open again, and maybe next time I will hear the whispers from the freezer room. Thanks for staying until the very last breath of frost. If this story made you avoid the cold aisle on your next grocery trip, please like, subscribe, and share to support more spine-chilling stories. From the shadows, this story is written and edited by Dark Lifeside Diaries.